So I'm very happy to see that we have a full shrine room, even though this morning we were worried there would be nobody here because of the train strikes. So it shows that you are all interested, which is a good sign. It's a good sign that we care about death and dying. That means that we care about how we live our life. We think about it now. We should think about it before that time comes, isn't it? So I think it's a good sign to see you all here. And I can't say that I have any experience whatsoever. Gaia has much more experience than I have in terms of death and dying as a doctor dealing with, all the patients that come to the hospital. But what I'm going to talk about is the Buddhist approach to death and dying. So you could say Buddhist approach to death and dying is very much to do with how we live our life. The two go together inextricably, like the two sides of a coin, of course, because we have to be born to die, and once we are born, we will die. That's the one thing we know for sure. We will die. What we don't know is when we will die, the kind of conditions we will have when we die. Will we be young? Will we be old? Will we be sick? Will we be healthy? Will we be at home? Will we be in the hospital? Will we be at peace? We're not sure. But we know that our life will come to an end. It's like our life force will be spent at some point. We just have so much. Like, never mind how much food we're going to eat, which is the fuel we have. There's a limit to what our body can hold up with in terms of years and time. And it gets worn out. The elements of our body dissolve. The elements get worn out, our body gets worn out. So in Buddhism, we are very familiar, as Buddhist practitioners, we are very familiar with thinking about death and dying and impermanence. It is like the ground under our feet, you could say, in a way. It is a foundation for our practice. It is the fact that the recognition that everything, and that means everything is impermanent. Everything is transient. Our body, our friends, our health, our every external thing, of course, and our mind. It is very easy for us to observe this, and that is what we do as Buddhists. We contemplate, we reflect on impermanence, death and dying, and on how best to use our life so that, we make the most of the time that we have here. So it is something, I would say, as a Buddhist, you become more and more familiar, but like all of us, when we start to think about it, because it's the unknown, there is fear and uncertainty and all sorts of mixed emotions involved around the topic of death and dying. So we know we are going to die, we don't know when, but we know that our life force will be spent like a pond that eventually dries up. A pond full of water. There will be a point where, that's it. There's no more water left, and we have to move on. So the Buddhists, we look at it in a way of saying our existence, our reality. It is fenced by birth, old age, sickness, and death. This is a thing, this is a common reality shared by all of us. Birth, old age, sickness, deterioration, and death. And within that fence, you could say, within that boundary of our existence, of our reality, we talk about the 6 realms of existence. It's a very Buddhist term, the 6 realms of existence. But we think of it as 6 realms of experience. So related to very much the expression of the 6 negative emotions of anger, desire, jealousy, ignorance, pride, and avarice. And so within this boundary, within our reality, these are the experiences that we are constantly going through from one to the other. And the Buddhist way, or at least one Buddhist way of looking at it, it says, you could say it's like a hospital. We are like in a hospital with 6 wards, these 6 realms. So a hospital with 6 wards, and maybe now we might be in the desire realm, in the ward where all the sickness in that ward is caused by desire. And maybe the ward next to us might be the ward where all of the sicknesses are caused by anger, hatred, aversion. And another ward where all the sicknesses are caused by jealousy, and then by pride and by ignorance. So we move, generally, we tend to move from one ward to the other. And what we are trying to do is get out of hospital, right? Get better. We want to get better. We want to get out of those 6 wards of sickness, and we want to also go beyond the boundary of birth, old age, and deterioration, and sickness, and death. And it says that in this particular, very peculiar hospital of samsara, there's only one exit. It's not like today where you have to have emergency exits everywhere, and here and here and here you can get out. No, sorry. There is one exit to samsara. There's only one way of escaping this constant cycle of birth, sickness, and death. And this is by taming our mind. Because the causes of sickness are those negative emotions. The causes of sickness are all of those difficult and confused ways of thinking that give rise to a lot of pain and distress, and that then give rise again to a lot of negative actions and cause more than suffering and sickness. We're talking about sickness in a metaphorical way. So all of the causes of sickness and suffering and death are within our mind. And so the way to free ourselves is by taming our mind. It's very key. I mean, to me, I would say, of course it's key, but maybe not everybody would say that. But the main point is that the only exit, the only way we can free ourselves, the only way we can have truly a good death, truly a death that then transcends all of this suffering, is by understanding the nature of mind. And that starts by taming our mind, meditating, observing how we are so distracted, how we are distracted with the past, how we are distracted with the future, and how we are so rarely in the present moment. So you could say the exit really is if we are truly, essentially in the present moment. Maybe that is what the emergency exit is, but more we call that non-duality. Non-duality means seeing the nature of mind and understanding the nature of suffering. So that's the emergency exit. And that is what, as a Buddhist, you work with, you deal with, because life and death, they go together. If we want to have a good death, we have to live a good life. Ultimately, that's where the the remedy is. The remedy is in how do we live our life, and how much of our life are we so distracted by those 6 negative emotions and by thoughts of past and the future in many different ways. So yes, making use of our life, making our life very beneficial, living in the present moment. And we do that by accepting change. So mostly, I would say, in society, we don't accept impermanence. We live contrary to impermanence, to the reality of impermanence. We live as if we are going to be here forever. We live as if we are not going to get sick, we are not going to get cancer, we are not going to have an accident, we are not going to lose our loved ones. We live as if it will happen to everyone else, but not to us. It's some strange neglect we have, internal mechanism that shields us from this fact that really has nothing to do with Buddhism. It is a truth, it is a fact. Everything is impermanent and transient. So as a Buddhist, you try to live your life more and more in the present, not constantly reliving the past, not constantly pining for the future. It's said that if we are always going over and over and over the past, we are like somebody who's always sort of reheating leftovers. Instead of eating fresh food, we get all the leftovers out again and again and again, reheat them and we eat them and we get sick. Or if we are always living in the future, we are like somebody who's just reading cookbooks. We can't get satisfied by that either. So however many recipes we learn by heart and we think about them and we would love to have them, they give no satisfaction. So if we can really learn to live in the present, but with the understanding of the consequences of how we live our life, that would be the Buddhist view of how we prepare the best for our death. So you could say that living our life to the utmost, to the fullest, is but of course that could be interpreted in many different ways. But in a mindful way, and according to the laws of cause and effect, consequences of how we live our life, then that would be the best preparation for our death. The more well-tamed our mind is, the more peaceful our mind is now, the more likely and the more we have trained now, the more likely we are to be able to have some level of control over our mind at the time of death. Of course, depending on what form it takes. But so that training is really, really essential. The training during life. We cannot just, we cannot start when it's already too late. Because the training during our life, the habitual or the undoing of our old habits is what is needed. These habits of past and future and constant distractions. And often, of course, death and dying is not a comfortable experience. It is not a happy experience for many people. It is not a pleasant experience. It is in Tibetan called the painful bardo of dying. The painful bardo of dying. So only if we have trained our mind well does it become just the bardo of dying, because the painful aspect falls away due to us being able to master our mind at that time, of being able to face the unknown with a sense of peace and comfort, because we have learned, due to the reflection and impermanence, we have learned not to hold on to things. Because how can we hold on to something that is utterly transient and impermanent. But that is what we try to do. That's what I mean by saying we live our life contrary to the truth of impermanence, because we're always trying to freeze and to hold on and to solidify all aspects of our life that we want to stay as they are. But it is a lost case, because things are impermanent. So when we come to a recognition of impermanence, and that can come in many different ways, maybe not through reflection in Buddhism, maybe through personal experiences in your own life, like loss of loved ones, or seeing the suffering of others and observing what is going on, we come to that strong recognition that there isn't really very much external that we can rely on. So then attachment and aversion diminishes. It becomes less strong. It makes less sense to hold on. It makes less sense to grasp, because this grasping and desire and the aversion is what gives us suffering. It is the sickness in the hospital. It is the cause of the sickness. So there will, with less grasping and attachment and aversion, there will be less suffering. It will be easier to let go of loved ones. It will be easier to let go of our own body, our most treasured possession. It will be easier to let go of everything, like in terms of wealth, that people spend their whole life accumulating wealth and accumulating very good and comfortable lives, which makes a lot of sense in many ways. But also all of that has to go. All the things that one has put so much effort into. Buddhist centers have to go. Our attachment to our teachers have to go. Our attachment to our Dharma brothers and sisters, whatever it is we're attached to, all of that, all of it is impermanent. None of it is something we can rely on. Some of it can give us very good help and support during our life, but when it comes to the crunch, we are on our own, isn't it? We, as the saying goes, we come into our life alone and we leave alone. And so all we can rely on is our mind, our level of peace, our level of stability, our lack of fear, our lack of grasping, our lack of regret. Very important. So that depends on how did we live our life. So we see how important it is. We are mindful. We need to be mindful on how we live our life, because that way we will have less regret, because we will have been more caring in our relationships, in our families, and brothers and sisters, sons and daughters and partners, etc., etc. We will have less regrets. We will have less enemies, less ingrown relationships that we have not, where things have gone wrong and where we get stuck and then we don't speak to each other anymore and we can't bear the sight of them, and everything is bad and people take sides. And now that kind of relationship, we need to forgive. We don't want to die with that stuck situation, because according to Buddhism, we will meet up in the next life, So better to get it out of the way now. Don't wait to say, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I'm sure half of it was my fault. I'm sure I treated you badly. Please forgive me. If we can say that, probably the other person will also say the same, and we can meet halfway. But we should do it now and not hold on to whether it is resentments or regrets or fears and anxieties. All of that means that we need to live our life well in whatever we all think that means. Of course, we may have different views of what does that mean. But in a Buddhist way, it means living your life according to karma, cause and effect. Like trying to avoid doing harm in all different areas of life. Trying to live you could say ethics, actually I think is a better word. Trying to live an ethical life in all the different aspects and with our body, speech, mind. So then we can die maybe with some peace that we did our very best. We may not have done, we may not have got 5 stars, but maybe we can, 3 is okay, if we get 3 stars, and then maybe at least we've done our best. I think that's something, a feeling we want to have at the time of our death, that we don't have too many regrets. We don't have too many resentments. And ideally, we don't have too many fears. But that's hard to know, isn't it? Because we've not tried. This life we haven't tried before. So it's like we should get excited about this. We should get excited. We should use our life to be excited. There's this one experience in our life, at the end of it, we've never had. It's like going skydiving or going... It's something I would never want to do. But here we don't have a choice. So we should try and prepare for it and think this could be a very exciting adventure. And actually we say that our life, our life is a journey, isn't it? From beginning, there's a destination. I mean, there are many things we say also in Buddhism. Every moment is a beginning and an end. Every moment we die and we begin again. So every moment we have a new chance. But in terms of our life, it's like a journey. And when we go on a journey, we prepare for a journey. Depending on where we want to go. If we are going to India, we're going to Tibet, or we're going to Spain, or we're going to Canary Islands, wherever we want to go, we prepare by looking into what's the climate like, what kind of visa do I need, what sort of ticket can I get, what kind of clothes do I need to bring. We pack our suitcase, we do all our preparation and get ready to go. And then when we go, generally we say goodbye to our loved ones, We say goodbye to the ones we leave behind. And maybe we feel a mixture of sadness and happiness and excitement. I mean, ideally we feel that. But at least when we go on journeys, it's often like that. We miss our loved ones, but we look forward to the adventure, to the unknown. So you could say that dying is a bit like that as well. It's a journey. We're going on a journey, and we need to prepare. We need to look into it, and that's of course why you're all here today. We're exploring about death and dying, about this destination. Where are we going? The destination. Well, actually the destination, where do we want to go? Because that's also part of the Buddhist view, is setting your destination. You don't want to get off at the wrong stop. If you're going somewhere, going on a journey, you want to get off at the right station, not in the middle of nowhere, miserable place. You want to go to a good place. So in terms of preparation for our death, we have to do the same. We have to look into it. We have to understand. We have to reflect on impermanence. We have to prepare. We have to pack our baggage. We have to pack our bags, of course, only metaphorically. But what that means is, what do we take with us at the time of death? We take with us the good and the bad we have done during this life. We take with us the consequences of our actions. So our positive actions during this life will be like having a smooth journey, oiling the wheels. If it's a lot of negative actions, it will be sort of, maybe a difficult journey, maybe taking us to a difficult destination. But so, yes, in a similar way, we have to think about our destination. We have to train our mind. We have to prepare our mind for that destination. And we have to say goodbye to our loved ones. We have to realize that we are only together for a period of time, and we do not know how long that period will be. We are on loan in the world. Everybody is on loan. We are all here temporarily. We are all custodians, as I remember Lama Yeshe said about Holy Island. I thought that's a very nice word to use after he had just bought this big island of Holy Island. He said, we are just the custodians. We are not owners. We don't own anything because we won't be here for very long. So we should remember that, and we should say goodbye to our loved ones. I mean, of course, at that time, but in a way, we need to treat everyone, if only we could. It's very difficult, of course, but if only we could every day treat everyone as if this was our last day. Because then we would never argue about silly things. We would never get stuck and become ridiculously upset about minor little issues in our relationships and friendships, isn't it? We would just let it pass because it's no big deal. What's more important is that we have short time together. So in that way, it's like, we prepare for a journey, the journey of dying. And similarly, we say goodbye, and then we go to the unknown. And there it said that there are three things, like the Buddhist way of looking at this, three things that are helpful, three things we should, at the time of death, we should try and be aware of. Three things that are important. And one thing is the environment, to have the right environment at the time of death. So of course it refers to ourselves, and it refers to if we are with a loved one, someone or anyone, that we are trying to support them. The environment is very important. So having the right environment. The other one says having the right attitude, the right mental state, the right intentions. And then the third one is the things to do. Now that's a little bit too late if we're already at the very end. So things to do before, that are important to do before we come to the end. So those three things. So having the right environment, meaning, and I think also Gaia talked a bit about that, having supportive friends, serene friends maybe. Having friends that understand you, that understand what you need and what is right for you, because it's not as if everything is like one size fits all. But generally we say a peaceful environment, and to be with someone who has some familiarity with death and dying so that they are not afraid of facing death. Having friends or carers or, support by people who are comfortable to some degree with being in the same room as someone who's dying. They are not nervous. They are not worrying, what shall I say? They're just there, giving a sense of calm, giving a sense of presence, being there to look after your needs. So, with kindness, with honesty, and with peace. So a peaceful, calm environment with not a lot of fuss, not a lot of, emotions and sadness, people who stir up. Because I think at the time of death, one can easily become very emotional in a way that is not very helpful. So we want to be in an environment where those who are with us, they understand the importance of a focused, calm mind, and they don't talk about things that will make you sad or will make you upset or will make you think about your regrets or whatever that will upset your mind. They maybe you will have, in terms of a right environment, you will have things around you that inspire you, such as if you're a Buddhist, you may have a Buddhist shrine, pictures of people who inspire you, music that inspires you, chanting that inspires you, something to help your mind to be able to settle and focus on that journey, because you're just about to go on that journey and you want to focus on knowing where you're going, and so that you do get to the right destination. And then generally we say also for Buddhists is that you try to, so I brought this just to remind you all that this has actually got some very, very useful information, and it has information for carers and for hospital people and for friends and family. So if you're interested, you can look at them and see. One of the things is for if one dies in a hospital, or we have carers with us or nurses, that they are asked to leave the body undisturbed for a period of at least 4 hours. And I think in hospitals, this is best if you ask that in good time in advance, because maybe otherwise I think the beds are needed. So we found that if somebody is in a hospice and you tell the people in the hospice, the nurses, whoever, and you show them this document and you say, oh please, when my friend dies, would you mind leaving the body for 4 hours? They are very, very accommodating. They are very, very helpful, and they want to do whatever they can, but you need to tell them. So this is to give a time for that transition period, for the mind to be at peace. And we talk about the inner dissolution, but that's not something we need to talk about today. So the right environment, and then you say the right mental state, and I sort of touched on that, like in terms of how we think and how we feel and how we place our mind at that time is very, very important. It's said like it's extremely important. Our last thought, but I'm saying the state of mind, our mind state, really at the time of death is very, very important. So what is very important is that we don't die in anger. We don't die in resentment, or fueled up by some regrets, or fueled up by some negative mind states, because that will take us, it's a bit like taking the wrong train. Or maybe it could be that it doesn't necessarily mean, but it's a bit like, we get off on the wrong foot. So our mind state is very important to be peaceful. So we should say our piece. And also what I have found myself is that when people are at the time of death, say you die from cancer and you have very good time in advance to come to terms with it and to know that this is happening and you can do all the right things, then people are very, very honest. They are very sincere. Whatever they say at that time will be from the heart. If they say, I'm sorry, they really, really mean it. There's this depth of honesty and sincerity at that time. So that's very important. All the masks have fallen away. There's no need to pretend anymore at that time. You can be vulnerable. You can allow yourself to be vulnerable. And so, of course, for that reason, it's also very important that the dying person is surrounded with people who are understanding and familiar. So ideally, we can die without fear through having trained our mind, through having meditated, through having reflected on impermanence, to think about impermanence. You don't have to sit in meditation posture to reflect on impermanence. You see impermanence, we see it around us every instant. The sun gets up, the sun goes down, this happens, that happens, our age, everything around us. So we should really familiarize ourselves with impermanence so that when the time comes, it is not like a shock. When somebody says to us, you have cancer, I'm sorry, you may have 3 months left, you may not, we don't know. If we've had a good time in the Dharma, this really would not be, I think, too shocking. Because what have we been doing all our years as a Buddhist, if it is? Sorry to say. And maybe I shouldn't speak too loud because I don't know how I would react. But, but I do think, and I do feel in myself a certain confidence that with many years of practice, maybe it is not like I wouldn't say it's not a big deal, because in many ways it's a big deal, but I remember Siddha Rinpoche saying that we should not make death into something where we look at our thumb like this, meaning like don't make it into such a terrible big thing, scary thing. It's part of life. Impermanence is part of life. We live and we die, and we live and we die. And of course, the thing that we have now is we have the solidity of our body. We keep coming back to the same old body again and again. Sometimes we wish we didn't, maybe. We wish we had a newer, better one. But we have that solidity of our current body. We go to bed at night, we wake up. Yeah, it's still me. That we lose at the time of death. That familiarity of a groundedness in our own body, that will be gone. And so then that's when we can look at our mind and say, well, what is my mind like? Of course, we can observe that quite clearly in meditation. What is my mind like in meditation? We should ask ourselves. And if our mind is very unsettled, then we know we have work to do. Because even while we are so solidly, physically grounded in the present moment, we still have difficulty settling and focusing and not getting distracted here and there and everywhere. So the lack of physical groundedness is what happens at the time of death. And there, so really the key point is in the right attitude is we need to work on taming our mind, so at the time of death we can have no regrets, hopefully no fears. We can have appreciation. We can have gratitude. We can have devotion. We can have even great practitioners, it says they die with joy. It's a sign of a great practitioner. Like the 16th Karmapa says, nothing really happens at the time of death. Because there's no one there to die in the first place. So the right state of mind means that we should, at that time of death, we should ourselves bring to mind whatever practice we have learned, whatever we're familiar with, that's the practice we should focus on. But we should really try and instill positive mind states. Like I just said, appreciation. We have so many things to be appreciative for. So many good things in our life. All the good things that have happened to us. Be appreciative. And if you are with good friends, those good friends should try and instill and remind you of having the right mindsets, devotion and appreciation, and your confidence in the three jewels, in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, or whatever faith all of you have in your particular faith. So your faith will support you at that time. And then the third thing of these three things was, so one was the right environment, one was the right mind state, and the other one was the things to do. So the things that we should ideally have already done before we come to the point of we are maybe not conscious anymore, we cannot give any, we cannot say all this and this and this is what I want. We should put, as you say, our house in order. You should put your house in order. And I guess that really is why we have the David Waterston was here today. Because if you have worked your whole life and you have accumulated wealth, so this what I'm saying now doesn't really apply to us monks and nuns here, but then you do not want that to become a cause for obstacles for others after you're gone. And that, I can tell you, happens very, very often. That family members, brothers and sisters, or partners and brothers and sisters, or however people are interrelated, they all have their own ideas, and they may never really have discussed it until the time the parents have already gone. And then suddenly it's like, oh, like that, and like that, and like that, and then it all becomes a fight in the family. So it's extremely important that you give clear guidance of what you want to do with your wealth, of what you want to do with your body, and how you want to have your funeral, and things that are important to you. But if you do not make that very clear, then it easily becomes a cause of conflict in a family. And that would be the last thing anyone would want after you spend your whole life to try and make your children comfortable. And then they end up arguing about it. And it actually becomes a negative rather than being a positive. It becomes a negative. So I think we could leave it there. And if you have any questions? Yeah, there's one in the back. You have to speak really loud, sorry.
How do you think about euthanasia?
I didn't hear it.
Thank you, Lama. How do you think about euthanasia?
Yeah, it's a really, it's a difficult one, I think. It's a difficult one to really say, when I first started this whole idea, I don't know if few people remember, we went to the parliament once and we had a discussion. And the first item on the discussion came very unexpected to me, and it was about euthanasia, and I got very heated about it. I don't know if I feel quite as heated now, but I think it's a very sad thing that we should be talking about euthanasia. But I understand now that people come to it from different angles and different reasons. Of course, the fear of making euthanasia legal is that people who are in long drawn out illnesses, or who have for whatever reason, they may feel that in a way, there's a kind of pressure to have euthanasia. And I feel that is such a sad thing. We should be able to look after each other. So that's one thing. I feel I would not say happily yes to euthanasia, but then I understand that some people who maybe they think, death, this is the end. Death, that's it. It's the end of suffering. Whereas in fact the Buddhist view is not that death is the end of suffering. In fact, it could be worse after death. Could be much worse. It could be much worse. So you would not see, as a Buddhist, you don't see death as a solution or as an end in any way. But I can understand how some people who are not Buddhist, they view it as, oh, this is it. I have maybe years and years of suffering, and I'm a burden to my family, and I feel bad about this, and I just want it all to end. That's how some people think, but I would not say. I would think it's something that has to be very, very, very carefully considered in each individual case. Anybody else? Yeah. You in front row?
Thank you. Through recent experiences in hospices, I had real questions that remained around medicine and the use of medicines and pain relief and sedatives towards the end of death, and I found myself wondering, I guess, what the Buddhist perspective is and how also monks and nuns handle this at the end of life.
Mm-hmm.
And,
there's no specific difference in monks and nuns and lay people in handling pain medication. There's no particular vows that prevents a monk or nun from having pain relief. So that wouldn't be an issue. It would be just a very personal choice.
Because I guess what I'm thinking about is, I guess, wanting to have that very conscious and present, like, mind and clear mind state at time of death. I think my concern recently was, did or does medicine interfere with that? That was my...
Yes, I understand. Yeah. And I think the pain medications have improved a lot, and they don't dull you as much as before. But I think the Buddhist view would be that, well, all the practice that we have done through our life, it's like laying the tracks for that time as well. And you will keep going, whether you are conscious or unconscious. Those tracks, if you have laid out good, strong tracks during your life, they will carry you onwards, whether you are whether you're conscious or not. So I actually don't know, maybe Gaia knows better, like how many people are actually conscious at the time of death. I imagine that many people are not conscious. Is that correct? Like that they are medicated to a point where you cannot sort of sit up clearly in meditation at the time of death.
I mean, it's a highly evolved practice where people are meditating at the point of their death. That's high level of training.
So I know it's time to end.
I mean, I only know the stories, but
Okay.
but people who are, from a Buddhist point of view, people who are meditating at the point of death, they're highly evolved practitioners.
But so in terms of just being awake and being conscious, I don't mean necessarily being meditating, but have you found that most people are unconscious at the time of death?
They appear to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. That's what I thought.
They appear to be, but they also appear to be very aware.
Very aware. Yeah, and being able to hear. Oh.
Yes.
Oh. But I think, like in terms of if there is a lot of pain, like in relation to the situation, if you don't take the pain medication, you'll be so overwhelmed by the pain that you would anyway not be able to focus on anything else. So I think it's perfectly fine to take the medicines, whatever is available.
And also it's my view that those medicines have been around thousands and thousands of years, and they are there for a reason. We've evolved with them, and they've evolved with us. Most of the medicines we use are natural substances that derive from plants. So it's not exactly who we are.
Yeah. So I hope this was helpful for you, and we'll end it there.